Welcome to Book Club for Movies, everybody, for the week of December 6th. I'm Ryan Miller, and Spider-Matt himself... I'm sorry. I took out the amazing. It wasn't on purpose. Amazing Spider-Matt himself, Matt Amberg.
I like that you used that after I called you out on it, and that, like, I don't know.
That's why I'm saying I'm trying to,
No, we try things out on in real life and on the show. Sometimes I'm like, Rye Guy, and it never feels good. It has never felt good to call you or refer to you as Rye Guy.
Yeah, I've had a very limited amount of nicknames in my life. It doesn't lend itself, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't like Rye Guy. I'm not gonna go with that one.
The funny thing is I don't care about any of them, but I think at one point I got Rhino, kind of like a rhino.
Yeah, I know, which is great timing.
Yeah, right.
By the way, you saying that you were once called Rhino is longer than the amount of screen time he was on in the film. So that's kind of cool.
Oh boy. Let's get started here on Book Club for Movies, where we watch one movie a week and then talk about it. And boy, oh boy, do we talk about it. This week, it's going to be on the Amazing Spider-Man films. I did mention I had a bad idea. This is it. It continues.
Yeah.
Not my fault in some ways, all of my fault in other ways. But before we get into any of that, Matt, do you have a synopsis for the Amazing Spider-Man? We're going to do both movies. You can synopsize both.
Oh, don't worry.
You want.
I will.
In fact, I could in a single word. But
I will, and boy, will I. The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, coming at you at about 2 hours and 20 minutes per, give or take.
Yeah.
Written.
That's fine.
In order, by everybody. James Vanderbilt, Alvin Sargent, Steve Kloves for part 1. Part 2, Alex Kurtzman, Robert Orci, and Jeff Pinkner, both directed by Mark Webb. Starring Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, Sally Field, Rhys Ifan, Dennis Leary, Martin Sheen, Campbell Scott, Jamie Foxx, Dane DeHaan, and Paul Giamatti. Here is your Book Club for Movies synopsis for The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. The further adventures of Spider-Man, Aunt May, and the whole gang, but this time with Gwen Stacy.
Feels generous, but I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth. In fact, I don't want to...
I don't want to do this show. Done. No?
I know. I've already said they're bad and I don't like them. Obviously, I believe there's still a discussion to be had, but I also don't want to I never want to necessarily just rag on a film for an hour or something. Like, obviously, sometimes we don't like things.
And that's why we're going to rag on 2 films for an hour.
Also, not all of the time does it feel like punching down, We
can't punch down. We're not in Hollywood, man.
I don't know. It felt different, man. It certainly cannot be, because the other thing I feel about these 2 films is that they are studio run in a lot of ways.
Oh boy, do they
certainly wouldn't be punching down for that reason, but
these movies absolutely... Okay, so admittedly, I had a blackout at one point. I did not remember literally one thing from The Amazing Spider-Man. Rewatching it, I did not remember anything
Very
about
little
it.
For me. Yeah, I didn't remember Paul Giamatti at all. Now that you've already mentioned him,
and then I never saw part 2, so right. So that was a brand new thing for me. And I have So the first thing I want to call out, I want to point out that this. So I'm going to admit, yes, you're right. There's not a lot of positive here, but I want to talk...
I do have positive things, though.
I do have some, but I want to talk about something that I fundamentally did not like, and it permeates the entire, both the films, and I think it's a really dumb choice, and it absolutely is all of the background for Peter's family.
Oh, okay. I would say, and tellingly, I have no idea what you're going to say right now, whereas some movies, I'm like, I know what he's going to say about it.
No, it's the whole Peter's dad thing, and they were super scientists, and they're the one, they just leave him with Aunt May. Okay, sure. Then we find out they get on a private plane, and they had an underground laboratory, and all this stuff, and it was all funded because of... Oh, my... Seriously?
They're so concerned with that stuff, man. It's
Peter
insane.
Is best when he is just Aunt May's, basically son. That's Peter.
Animated by the death of his uncle
Yeah.
Ben, not obsessed with like in this movie, it's all at the expense of Uncle Ben. Like he gets so marginalized that, which fine,
It's
we can all get
hilarious.
tired of that story, and we had a little bit of a talk about origin stories in the last show, but
Yes.
man,
Was I bummed out that so much of this movie was focused there?
it's movies, they
Yeah.
both. In fact, that when the second one starts and it starts with his parent stuff, I was like, "What? What do you want to bet?" Because again, if I remembered very little from the first one, like you, but I also remembered even less from the second one, which
Basically puts us on
common
ground.
pretty much. But I made a bet at the beginning of the second movie when, again, they went into all this detail about his parents and stuff, and I was like, "What do you?" In fact, let me just read you my note at that point.
Ooh.
Doubling down on the parents, comma, do I care? Question mark. And then dollars to donuts, we could do without this. And then I had a note for the rest of the movie, try and answer why that opening scene is there. And sure enough, we did not need it. Even though they do obsess over his parents yet again in the same way they did in the first way. Like literally he goes back to the freaking briefcase to find the next plot point to take him to the next thing, which yes is a hidden base because for some reason, but yes, again, the whole opening scene, no reason. Sorry.
No,
okay. I'm getting, yeah. All right.
No, I love it. I watched these movies one day apart, and when the movie started, I went, "Oh, Campbell Scott's in this. Was he in the first one? I feel like he might have been. Who was he in the first movie?"
Already forgetting the first one.
My actual note: Campbell Scott was in the first one, wasn't he? Oh yeah, he's Peter's dad. Why are we getting this again? And then, so we could have the other side of it? Who cares? Wait, the Parkers have enough money to take private flights while they then leave Peter, Ben, and May. Ben, who we are all introduced to in the first movie, still clearly working as an electrician.
Do we see Uncle Ben at all in the second movie? Like even a picture of him?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I don't think we do, man.
Don't we? Do we not see a picture of him on the giant wall when he makes the weird web of garbage?
We definitely might. You're right. I shouldn't. I could have easily missed that in some of my disinterest, but
you would have been better off if you had.
But at the very least, I mean, there's no even flashback. Even
there is no flashback.
If there is anything, it is just a picture. You know what? Okay, wait, hold on. We did the thing I was trying not to do.
No, it's good.
Let's reset. And also, I want to say that part of the reason that the Tobey movies ended up being way more interesting than I thought they were going to be was because of where they fit in all of the comic book movie, history stuff.
Yeah.
And while I don't necessarily think I can say that as much about these movies, I still think there was a line to be drawn that I thought was super interesting, especially when I went back and started to look at the history behind them. Because one thing I never knew was that Spider-Man 4 by Sam Raimi was on the books for a while. I want to say 2 years even.
Yeah.
But what I thought was so interesting right off the bat is when Spider-Man 3 comes out in 2007, guess what movie comes out in 2008?
Spider-Man 4. Oh, wait.
Iron Man. Sorry, why did I say it like that? Okay, I give it the Spider-Man emphasis. But
the Iron Man. He's an Iron Man.
Iron Man.
He's an
the movie that launches that Marvel, phase 1 comes out in 2008. So
that's
I think
crazy, man. That is crazy that Spider-Man 3 comes out and the following year is when the MCU begins.
And we talked about how the Raimi movies were a sea change, and I do still believe that. In fact, now that I have finished Spider-Man 3, which I know we didn't give a lot of time to in the show last week, but that's fine. But also now having finally finished it, and thanks to Adam, friend of the show, Adam, for having me verbalize this a little bit. He asked the question on Discord, but asked if it was really worth watching, if I would even recommend it at this point.
Yeah.
And not only would I say yes because of the Sandman stuff, which we mentioned, and really just, again, anything Sandman in Spider-Man 3 is really just fantastic still,
really
even though you can tell it's kneecapped and muddled and confused because they had to do so much stuff at the same time. Like, whenever that stuff starts, there's the whole thing where he turns into Sandman and he's just trying to reconstitute himself, like learning how to move the sand.
Freaking cool moment, man.
It's amazing. Yeah. And then all the way up until the end, where, again, some of it does seem kneecapped or at least trite because it's coming in the middle of so much. But even those lines that Thomas Hayden Church gets with, I didn't want to be this, this isn't, like it was all kind of out of his control. And he becomes a tragic figure in a lot of different ways and then kind of just blows away, into the, all just fantastic.
It's great.
I even like the ending of Spider-Man 3 as an end to that film and that trilogy, now that we know that it was going to be. But all of that, I would recommend Spider-Man 3. But apparently Sam Raimi never got a version of Spider-Man 4, never got a script of Spider-Man 4 that he was ever happy with. I think all he knew was that he wanted Malkovich, I think, for the Vulture. Again, none of that was decided because they never got even as far as a script. And eventually, and thankfully, really, Raimi backed out because they couldn't come to an agreement, which did not happen with Spider-Man 3. I did it again.
I'm loving this. It's a whole new paradigm, and I'm into it.
How will I emphasize it next?
You put the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
The Spider-Man 4 gets canceled in 2010, but get this, principal photography starts on Amazing Spider-Man that same year.
Well, sure.
Yeah, and this is one of those instances where they're not even saying this is like Spider-Man 4 was canceled straight up. Nobody's even trying to say that it became Amazing Spider-Man and it spent this long in production. No, they're just saying Spider-Man 4 canceled. Somehow they became comfortable with beginning principal photography on The Amazing Spider-Man within that self-same year. So
they must have been planning on the migration away from Tobey and Sam Raimi at some point. I mean, Spider-Man's a cash cow for them, so it's not like they're going to keep him on the shelf for too much longer, especially after those movies just constantly did well, So
well, I thought I remembered hearing that the rights were about to expire, so they had to do another movie or they would lose the option or something like that. But I didn't find that in any of my other readings, so I don't know if that ended up being true or not. But
I remember that's come up a few times. I think that happened with Fantastic Four at one point too.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking. I think you're more correct in that the Marvel movies had launched and Sony knew a little bit more what they had at this point and knew. See, this is the crazy thing. Iron Man comes out in 2008. In the same year that Spider-Man 4 is canceled, Iron Man 2 has come out. And even then, I think The Incredible Hulk was before that. So then Marvel keeps going with Thor, Captain America, and then also in 2012, the year that Amazing Spider-Man comes out.
That's the Avengers, right?
The Avengers, man. A month before. And not only did they not think to get out of the way of the Avengers, I guess maybe they... No, that's not true. They must have known at some point. The Avengers wasn't an after the fact phenomenon. I feel like they could have.
No, if they put that after a month, that's them thinking the Avengers is going to have okay legs and it's going to be a real good follow up.
The tides will rise all, whatever that goes. Yes, one of those.
A rising tide lifts all ships.
So maybe the most blatant way that we see this new Spider-Man entering the new comic book movie era is in the cast that you already mentioned. Freaking Charlie Sheen. No, Charlie Sheen is Uncle Ben. I just fixed that movie.
That right done. Movie
I
resolved.
loved you in Wall Street. Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben, Sally Field as Aunt May, like actors that very possibly would not have looked twice at any of the Raimi. Maybe by Spider-Man 3 you could have got some of them, but certainly not when the first Raimi Spider-Man came out,
Sure.
I promise I'm not trying to not talk about these movies, but I also want to mention Mark Webb because I knew him from 500 Days of Summer, but didn't know anything else about him or, of course, have any idea for what he might bring to these. I think the hope was that he would bring kind of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man vibe to the whole thing,
Sure.
Having done something small like 500 Days. But have you looked up his IMDb? Do you know how many things he's directed? This will blow your mind right off the bat, just when you see how many. 72?
What?
Yeah. So then you think, wait, what has he done? Oh, he was a music video. I was about to say music video commercial guy, but I think he's a music video guy and then has since done more TV. And I try not to judge music video directors by the bands that they do music videos for, because I feel like if somebody approached me to do a music video for a band I didn't necessarily love, I'd probably still do it because of some reasons.
Money is good. It's a good reason, though.
He's got a few Green Days on there, no doubt. Maroon 5, Puddle of Mud, Three Doors Down,
My Chemical Romance, Diddy,
lots of My Chemical Romance stuff. POD,
AFI.
Oh, does he have it? Okay, sure. Incubus,
Daniel Powder,
Hilary Duff,
Yellow Card.
All American Rejects. Did you say Yellow Card?
Yeah.
Take it back. Yeah, so in a way, after 500 Days of Summer, sure, choose the guy, makes sense. But in everything he did before that, and honestly after, in fact, my bet would be after The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, he decided he doesn't like doing studio films so much. Not that he's gone back to another indie or anything, but he mostly does like TV now. So if I had to guess, I would say that either he didn't have a positive experience, because I don't even really want to blame him much for Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, but at the very least, maybe he was not involved as much as he would have wished. And
Okay.
honestly, I can see it. Like, I can see some of the small moments in the Amazing Spider-Man films, and this is me trying to get back to some of the good stuff, where I'm like, okay, like something is working here. Somebody understands something, and somebody has a handle, and it's all coming together in a way that I'm enjoying, you know?
So ultimately, I think here's what I come down with on these movies, and you already touched on it, but these movies don't feel like they were directed by a person. They feel like these were it's like there was a robot making a Spider-Man movie. This was
that was good.
They were given a here's a whole mess of film, and then they let a robot put it together, because it just
yeah, it was one of those internet memes where I fed in 100,000 Spider-Man comics into a robot, and this is the screenplay it gave me.
Right. No, that's kind of what it seems like, just with how some of okay, Norman is dying, so that's kind of the plot of the first one. Norman is dying, and that's how we're going to bring in Kurt Connors to do all of the stuff to turn.
Actually, I think that's all in the second one, man.
Nope. No,
What?
not at all. The entire plot of the first movie literally revolves around him creating the
It's Peter's dad and Reese Ifan's Connors.
Yeah, it's Connors is creating the serum that's going to help regenerate things, because if you remember in the sequel, that's the whole thing, is they've got a degenerative disease. So he's trying to make that. And there's the one dude who is constantly telling Connors that you gotta get this stuff done. You gotta get to work now.
Okay, I'm remembering like a shadow, like literally like we don't ever see. There's no actor attached to Norman Osborn in the first one, right? We never see
Norman. No,
we
get the shadow, but then he is talked about the entire time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I latched more onto the tragic aspect of the Lizard, which, hey,
sure,
I kind of like everything about the Lizard in The Amazing Spider-Man. I know the look might be divisive.
The face is the only thing I don't like. I would have I truly would have rather they just give him the kind of alligatory, crocodile-y lizard face that he has.
They do mention that several times, and I guess Mark Webb was approached about it several times. Snout versus no snout.
Yeah, and no snout looks awful.
I was into it, I think, for how much of a departure it was for some strange reason. But even apart from the look,
characterization and everything.
Yes, I think Reese Ifan's might be my favorite in the entire film, actually. And his
easily
portrayal of Dr. Connors. And while I'm a sucker for kind of tragic villains, you know, that type of story, it's not fully realized here. You know, he does end up rescuing Peter at the end and kind of gets a little bit, but that's literally it. For the rest of the movie, he's devolving in more ways than one.
Sure.
It's just there's no hint throughout, there's no nuance throughout that something else is nagging at him, that he has a conscience still, or that he's in there somewhere. It just seems like he goes totally evil until he rescues Peter. And you know, so even as a redeemed tragic villain story, it's pretty bad, but I kind of like the Lizard stuff.
No, I like the Lizard stuff. I thought he was good. I actually typically really enjoy Emma Stone. I think she's fine in both of these movies. I don't think that character is. I think in the second movie they do her a real disservice. Like she is up and down with him. He's up and down with her. That whole story felt like it was written by 4 different people at 4 different times, and they each had a different page, and they were like, "Well, I'm taking this one. This is my scene." And like, because it's the like she breaks up with him and then I'm sorry, I was having a moment. Wait, what?
It's like the tail wagging the dog. Is that
Yeah.
how that one goes
Yeah.
too, right? Where it's like we want to get them back to a place where we can obsess over their relationship for the whole movie. So they need to break up again in the first, even though technically they were broken up at the end of the last one. There was a through line that they could have had, certainly, that they didn't have to bring them back together just to break them up again so we could go through. Because this is the other thing. I might agree with you on Emma Stone, who I typically like. I am baffled by the person that saw her screen test with Andrew Garfield and thought,
Boy,
we've got it because of the chemistry.
there doesn't seem to be a ton of chemistry there, especially for people who are dating. Like
And
in
and I
real
don't even-
life. I don't
Oh,
know.
man.
She's fine, but yeah, she is. It's not good.
You know what? I'll even give you this. And this actually goes back to a conversation we had just afterwards, because we didn't give much weight in the last show to the relationship, like the actual relationship between Peter and Mary Jane in the Raimi movies, which I actually really like and might be my favorite portrayal of that in any of the Spider-Man stuff so far.
Agreed.
But I am well aware that it's also the most classical representation of it, both
Sure.
in terms of maybe the comics, also just in terms of romance, and certainly in terms of movie romances. It's definitely the more classical version of that. I think it works. I think it's a good one of those. In fact, the upside down kiss and this, that, like it's got a bunch of great moments.
That's Spider-Man and Mary Jane, though. That's Peter and Mary Jane, even to a point.
I would totally believe that, but I also just see, just cinematically speaking, it is more classical.
Yeah,
So
of course, absolutely.
when it comes to Emma and Garfield in this movie, there is a part of me, in fact, this continues over to the Tom Holland Zendaya stuff, which I do like better still, and I like, period. There is a part of me that's like, okay, old man, like we need to get a millennial in here, which, there are people maybe even more equipped than millennials at this point. That might be a dated term, but I do get the feeling that there might be an age group that these, especially the romance part, is no longer applicable to myself and the ways that, not that I was any grand romance expert ever either. In fact, I might be talking strictly of on-screen romances in the way I understand them.
You have kids.
But that's true. I've done it at least twice. The relationship between Gwen Stacy and Peter in these amazing movies is just the most staccato, weird,
Wooden,
like overly awkward
cardboardy, yeah.
wooden. Yes, like again, maybe I'm too old, maybe I don't get it, but to me, boy, it's super annoying to watch those two on screen together. It is just the worst. Like Andrew Garfield can't ever. Oh, he's all over the place, man. I'm getting mad just thinking about it.
No, it's frustrating. It is. It's totally frustrating. I hear you. Like I said, I think she's fine. I think them together not so good, and I don't think she was the right choice overall. Like that. Like it's just.
Oh,
not,
for Gwen Stacy even.
Yeah, I don't think she was the right. I don't think Gwen Stacy was ever the right decision for these movies.
Oh.
If they were going to build to kill Gwen Stacy, if that was the entire plan, was we're going to make two movies, and in that second movie, we know we're going to kill her. Fine. I guess that makes some sense. Building up the what goes behind Spider-Man and all that. But then instead of focusing on that, and instead of building that, we have a second movie that's so bloated with non-story to get somewhere, and then the relationship that we're kind of actually in agreement at one point with when Gwen's like, maybe we're just on different paths. Like, yeah, I think you are. I think go to Oxford. You do your thing. He'll stay in New York.
I know, it's such a
Like-
good thing too. Like go take the scholarship to Oxford,
Go.
for gosh sakes.
Yeah,
Like
it's a whole thing.
it's not good when you're not rooting for the relationship. Yeah.
Right. So by the time that shocking moment at the end comes, you're just like, oh man.
Yeah, we're going to spoil all this, by the way, but also it's the Gwen Stacy storyline. But also I forgot that Gwen Stacy died at all.
Super brutal in the way they kill her here too, man. I loved it.
Yeah, I was actually stoked that they didn't shy away from the brutality of her death, and it was at Peter's hand, like he in fact, if if I do remember the comics enough, he captures her with his web and it breaks her back, right? Like, even in the comics too,
breaks
right?
her neck, essentially, yeah.
Next back.
Like,
Okay.
I mean, yeah. So in
this one, it looks like they split the difference between her head still hits the ground real quick,
dude,
and
her head,
you know,
definitely hit the friggin' ground.
But here's my issue with that, even though I forgot it happened at all, because at one point I had in my notes, you know what? Kill Gwen Stacy, fix the whole movie. And I've never argued for a fridge, because that's what that is, right? That would be fridging Gwen Stacy for the film, and using it as some sort of motivation for Spider-Man throughout. I get that.
Right.
In fact, one of the more interesting examples of a fridge that I've come across recently was in Spider-Man 3, where they essentially fridge Harry in plain sight. You know, they just give him amnesia and he kind of disappears for a while. And I guess it doesn't figure in so much to Peter's motivation, but I thought that was an interesting. They don't even do that. They don't kill Gwen Stacy early enough.
You can't fridge a man.
Oh, I can fridge a man. I've done it several times.
Okay, Jeffrey Dahmer.
But unfortunately, I feel like that would have solved a lot of the problems in the second film. I mean, a lot of my problems with the second film, it being that I don't like the chemistry between Gwen and Peter, and I saw it fail for an entire movie already. The second movie is just retreading so much of the same stuff as the first.
Yeah, with just different villains. They just added some villains. And like, boy, that second movie, again, I can't say anything other than both of these movies. When you say Mark Webb seems like he may have had a bad experience, yeah, it certainly does seem like that, because these movies don't seem like they have much of anything that we saw in 500 Days of Summer in it. But I want to say some good things here, because there are some really good things here.
Thank you for bringing it back. I have some more to. You're like
one of the things that I universally love in my superhero movies is whatever the weird montage is that they're going to throw in about learning the power or whatever. With Spider-Man, it's always fun to see how they're going to do him creating the character of Spider-Man, right? I think it's great. It's done well here. I really like aspects to this Peter Parker. I like the science aspect to him. I like the getting to build watching him build the web shooter and figuring out, oh, you know what? I saw this high tensile thing that comes from Oscorp that I can order, and it comes in. Like, I like that ingenuity, because that is Parker. He was always supposed to be a very smart guy. So I really like all of that stuff. Most of the time when he is swinging around and he is being jovial Spider-Man, I think Andrew Garfield's pretty good at it. Like, he is I think a solid Spider-Man. I love in Spider-Man 2, I actually love the moments with the kid. I actually really love the moment with Jamie Foxx when he saves him from the thing and he talks to him like he recognizes, you just went through something traumatic. I'm going to try and just bring you down and you're good. Okay, man.
That's what I was saying. All those small moments that I feel like he was so good at in 500 Days, like, you can see him.
Those are the tiny bits here and there. And most of it is when Garfield is in the outfit, when he's Spider-Man. I think Garfield actually does shine pretty well as Spider-Man. I like him in general as Spider-Man. I don't enjoy Peter Parker, but it's not him. It's definitely the way he's written. Can I see him be the nerdy one that gets beat up? Yeah, I actually can, because I can see him doing it. Like, he runs into an issue that I think where you want him to be the nerdy teenager. That dude is too good looking to be. I mean, be real.
I do have that in my notes.
He's too good looking to be a nerdy teenage Peter Parker. It's just, that's what that is. If you get past that.
But I think the writing around it isn't good enough either.
No, that's what I'm saying. Is the writing.
Or they don't believe it either, you know?
I could see him doing that. I could see him succeeding in that part. Like, because of how they did the science stuff and how they give him a couple of moments like that. Sure, I can see it. He just never gets an opportunity to be that. He's always a pretty cool regular dude, Peter Parker, man.
Well, let's talk about because they do try at the beginning of the film to be that Peter. And actually, I was glad to see they did, because we had a pretty interesting discussion on Discord about this with, again, friend of the show, Adam, but also probably our resident Spider-Man expert. Would you agree?
Probably.
Like, he's read far more Spider-Man than, which isn't hard to do, than me. I don't know. I can't say for you, but
he definitely remembers it more than I do. That's
okay. He's
damn
certainly
sure.
read and collected a lot, but he had something interesting to say. He said he started when he listened to the show. He was talking about the part where we were talking about the nerdiness of Peter and how Toby nailed it for you, and for me it was kind of like, well, I guess I never really thought about him so much as that, or I didn't know that Peter. So he started thinking about it and realized that he did, I'll just quote it now, he did read a ton of Spidey back in the day, but he started with the Amazing Spider-Man McFarlane era, i.e. long after Peter was a grown man, married to MJ, long after Kraven's Last Hunt. So the Peter he knew from the comics wasn't a skinny, nerdy kid, but rather a grown man struggling with things like how to balance family with superhero life, etc., all that stuff. Arguably, maybe Spider-Man 2 stuff, you know?
Sure.
So basically, he was saying a lot of it came down to who you read or who you knew Peter to be, because unsurprisingly, for as long as Peter Parker and Spider-Man have been around, there have been different versions of nerdy, not so nerdy, all that. So that maybe explains some of it. In this movie, Amazing Spider-Man, obviously, very, very obviously, they want him to be nerdy Peter. But yes, it's not only for very personal reasons, it's not only unsuccessful, it's also a little grating in the way they do it. And it's because, number one, it's a very short period of time in the film where they try to make him nerdy, basically.
Right.
And yes, he is too good looking for it, probably regardless. They don't change. It's not like they gave him glasses at the beginning that he takes off. You know,
that would have made him a nerd.
But actually, he does wear his dad's glasses for a bit too, which doesn't work, right? Like, he doesn't wear glasses, then he finds his dad's glasses, and he wears them for a while.
Yeah, he takes his
that
contacts out, and and then Ben comes in and says, "You look just like him."
Yeah, that's right.
And he goes, "I saw a guy on TV who looked just like you on 3.5 Men or something."
Loved you in Wall Street.
Loved you
Again,
Boom!
Got it. So,
Nailed it.
But when he walks down the corridor of that school with his skateboard in hand, and this is why it's a little too personal to me, and that is somehow, I don't know exactly what they're going for here, because
he was wearing a Thrasher shirt.
Either they want it to be like that counterculture thing that, you know, you are still cool, but not to the cool people, you know? Like, I just don't know, because personally speaking, this is what happened to me, right? Skateboarding was huge in the 80s. You know, you were cool if you skateboarded in the 80s. And then in the 90s, it was not. You know, like, yes, within subcultures and, you know, more discerning people, sure. But still, for the most part, I would walk by a jock, you know, with my wallet chain, and he would say something derisive. You know, like, that's how it was. Because I disappeared for a while and then came back and went to college and saw that skateboarding had exploded again. So I was writing all of these, because in beginning writing classes, you can write pretty much anything you want. So I was writing all of these weird skateboard counterculture think pieces. And I did a paper, and I remember this to this day, about how, you know, it's being accepted by so many, but it was like people carrying skateboards weren't necessarily skateboarders anymore. They just had that as an affectation. So I got up there and I said that, and I remember this dude raising his hand and fully not understanding what the heck I was talking about, because he had already grown up and been through high school in an environment where skateboarding was cool. Like, skateboarders were the cool kids now. So I don't know what this movie is trying to do necessarily with that skateboard and nerd Peter Parker, which unfortunately they don't stop either. Like, they keep putting skateboard references in for both movies. Like, he's a skateboarder.
And then he gets a skateboard montage.
Okay, and this is where maybe I'm most conflicted, because I really don't mind that montage, because
it's a good montage, though, for real. Like, it's a solid, all the skateboard tricks and stuff are good. Like,
yes, well, one, sure, but also they're integrated in a way that he's coming to terms with his powers. Like, it's that moment where, you know, he's trying to learn how to swing and do his acrobatics and find his newfound balance, and it's through the lens of skateboarding tricks. So that only makes it harder, but I'll give it this. overall, and it's one of the goods I want to say about both movies, really.
I love that we had to go through swimming through a mire of
Sorry.
just this bog of horrible things.
I had to get it out because literally anytime a skateboard showed up, my only note is "ugh, the skateboard again." I don't. I like I said.
So what's
I'm
the
biased.
good thing? What was the good thing that you're reaching to?
The good thing is, I think for both films, I really liked the action choreography or stunt choreography. I've tried to find the people responsible, and I think at best it might be Gary Ray Stearns, which has somewhat of a pedigree, but also I think understands the way that individuals can move through environments. Because, and this is where you might disagree based on your vision of Spider-Man, I love all of his kind of asymmetrical movements through stuff. Like there's even a point where he jumps off the bridge, but he jumps off like sideways and then throws the web to the side. Like he's already in the swing motion stuff that if for as much as I liked the Tobey stuff, I don't remember anything like that. And we talked about liking the swinging. I really like all the, like I said, straight up choreography, not just to the swings, but to, his fights and the way he approaches the fights as Spider-Man. I was very into all of that. So
yeah, actually, I fully agree. The swinging in particular, I love it. It because so a lot of the swinging for me definitely harkens back to the McFarlane era, like the way he kicks that knee out, the way he
yes,
McFarlane always kind of drew him in my memory anyways. When he would do when he'd get to like the pinnacle of the jump, he'd kind of like do this weird arcing thing with his back, like he was going over a high jump.
Yep. That's it.
And no, I love all that stuff. I think it's great. I think it looks fantastic. And it reminds me of, like I said, the McFarlane stuff, but also it harkened to that Spider-Man game from a few years back on the PlayStation. Like they nailed how Spider-Man's locomotion needed to work. Yeah. And that's kind of what this was like. And so when I mentioned all the stuff earlier about Garfield playing Spider-Man, this is part of it too. Just that general look to it. Yeah, absolutely. Love that stuff. And the fight scenes, for the most part, yeah, they felt real Spider-Man-y. I liked him when he's quippy and when he's doing that Spider-Man. I think he's fantastic and potentially might be my favorite iteration of Spider-Man doing that. But
no,
but he doesn't. But he number one, he doesn't get to do it enough. And the other thing that drags it down is all the villains are bad. They're just not well done. Like Connors I'm talking about Spider-Man 2 here.
Yeah, we've been there. Yeah, that's fine.
Electro, I mean, was already a tough sell for me. I'm not a fan of Jamie Foxx. I don't generally like him. He was whatever. He's fine here, I guess.
Sure.
Dane DeHaan. So one note that I have from both movies is that do you recall the film Gremlins 2: The New Batch?
Vaguely, sure. Yes.
So in Gremlins 2: The New Batch, the entire plot of the first film is migrated into a super building.
I think I just realized where this is going.
And all I can think of in this movie is Oscorp's building is like Clamp Towers. I'm waiting for it to be, this building is on fire. Hey, mister, you're in the men's room. Little things like that. On 76, that's where they've got the genetics lab, where they've got cows walking around with things on their head so they can hear the telepathically read the cow's mind, and it says things like, I am calm and centered. I enjoy giving milk. So that's what Oscorp came off to me as. And then Dane DeHaan, what a interesting cast. So I actually really would have loved him if swap him and Franco, man. He looks so much closer to Willem Dafoe, which has to be why they cast him. They had to cast him because they were like, hey, who's the newest Willem Dafoe? It's Dane DeHaan. He's an ugly looking son of a bag. Bring that.
It did seem like a short leap to the Green Goblin Gremlin at the end.
The Green Gremlin, yeah. Dude. So I actually do have that written down too. He looks more like a gremlin than the goblin. Yeah, that whole makeup thing, everything about that, that was all so rushed and poorly done that it's just.
I mean, the second movie is demonstrably worse than the first.
Yeah, I mean, almost all the way through there, but there are again a couple of moments in that movie that super just work.
Sure, but with the Green Goblin stuff, like they literally it's the beginning of Peter meets Harry is Harry, somebody's here, goes to the top of the stairs, and Peter's there, and they just already know each other. Basically, they're hoping that we will bring in some of the baggage from the Tobey movies. I can't imagine, because if they think they're doing the right amount of work to get us, I know in the comics also Harry and Peter are friends and all that, but still, it's just they meet and we're just automatically supposed to expect that they have been best friends this whole time, also throughout the first movie, even though we never see him.
Right.
You know, and then they go through this work. There's another montage of sorts, and by the end, sure, I believe they're friends, but in no way do they do enough work to make the rest of that pay off or be earned at all.
No, and then the whole, it's making him the 20-year-old CEO of Oscorp after his father's died, and then the spider thing, and then they're gonna blame him for Electro's death. It's such a, again, these movies both felt like they were written by robots. Like I don't know, Kurtzman and Orci, they've been around for a while. They've had some stinkers under their belt, so it's not out of bounds for them.
Live long enough to see yourself become the enemy. How's that go?
Yeah. Yes, you become the enemy.
Write enough screenplays for long enough to watch yourself become the bad screenwriter.
Become the best. Yes, that's my goal, is to become a terrible screenwriter. So let me just write a bunch of good ones. Yeah. I get the last thing I want to say, I guess, I think about these movies in general is there are some great ideas, I would argue, sprinkled throughout these movies that are never properly executed upon and only leave like that little taste of a what if, because I think there are good movies here with significant changes, making them totally new movies and totally different movies with totally different things. The one thing I do want to actually mention real quick that I was kind of bummed out by with these movies is there's one promise that we probably won't get, and that is Felicity Rogue One being Black Cat. Like, yeah, I could dig. I liked her, I know her from Rogue One.
Oh wow.
She was playing Felicity, totally playing Black Cat.
That went right over my head.
She would have been.
And it's dumb because when she gave her name, I was like, oh, that's close to her real name.
Yes. Felicia. But she would have been, knowing from Rogue One, seeing her in that, and after seeing her in it, it's like,
oh yeah,
she would have made a solid Black Cat.
But this is the thing though, because they also, by the end of the film, they're setting up the Sinister Six. And oh my gosh, would I like to see a Sinister Six movie? Yeah. Are you kidding? But by the end of this movie, especially with how they do Rhino and that final, scene or whatever, do I want to see a Sinister Six movie? No, not at all. Are you kidding? Like, don't stop it now. So sure, like I would have loved to have seen her as Black Cat, but by the end of this movie, no, don't stop. Don't even just reset.
I love
back to zero.
I love that they showed every moment of Paul Giamatti in the trailers for this. Like, he was only in the movie for 5 minutes. He's in the movie at the very beginning in the front of a car for about 30 seconds. And then he gets about 4 minutes and 30 seconds of screen time at the end in the costume.
And he's just a mech though, dude. Like,
no, he's just
a mech.
It's adding missiles and guns to the Rhino misses the point. It's
and I should never say it's just a mech. I should be excited to see a mech all of the time.
Every time, yeah.
And now I'm not excited to see Rhino or a mech, so it's just no.
That's what the Spider-Mans.
I've got more. Oh man. Okay.
I've got more.
Answer a couple questions. How about this?
All right, hit me.
Peter gets bitten by a spider.
I've heard about that.
One of thousands, it seems. Do they address that? I think in the second movie they try to retcon a little bit. Like, even that I don't get, because I feel like they try to show his father destroying the spiders, which obviously couldn't have been the thing because he got bitten after his father.
Yeah, it's I don't know. And again, the fact that Dad was the original Spider-Man, essentially.
But yeah, so there's just a million of the radioactive spiders.
Well, in the second one, they retcon it by saying they killed all the spiders because of the lawsuit.
Oh, maybe that was just a bad montage. Because I remember the spiders. They show the spiders getting killed, and then maybe they flash back with Peter's dad, and I just put them together or something. I don't know.
Yeah, they kill all the spiders in the second one because of what happened with Lizard, and then we find out that they killed them, but they actually did pull out the venom. And then we get
and it's the venom that turns hair, yeah.
And then we get the video that says from Peter's dad saying, "Well, I'm the one who I changed the genome, so it's mine. If they kill me, they'll never be able to use it."
He's so obsessed with his dad. Does that happen in the comics?
I could not tell you. I racked my brain thinking I don't remember his parents ever in the comics. I mean, I remember them coming up in like. Chameleon might change into them at one point, but it's not them, it's Chameleon or something like that. Right.
Anyway, the other thing, I like how last week I mentioned how my barometer for superpower, like coming to terms with superpowers, is ripping doorknobs off. And then there's a sequence in the first movie where they overdo it so much that it almost comes back, and I'm like, all right, to me that's an example of clumsy film, or at least overdone filmmaking. But in his scene, he like rips off the doorknob to everything, like the knob to the sink and that, and like
I loved that, and I thought it was so funny, and it. But you're right. It actually needed to go a little bit longer.
So
that it would come all the way around, because it's one of those moments that I actually feel would be solidly done, quintessential Peter Parker. The I'm just tripping over everything, like it's all falling apart and I don't know what to do. And then and it keep going for a bit. Yes, I thought it was funny, but
okay, all right. I mean. Yeah, I guess I don't know. That's more of, I guess maybe I laughed, so it's good. Hey, how about that?
There you go. It's a positive.
And incredibly bad is Uncle Ben's actual death. Maybe I had stopped paying attention, so answer me this. Like, are they really just out and about? Like, Peter's out and about for no reason, like at a convenience store.
Peter ran away.
Oh, okay.
Peter ran away because he was upset. And then Uncle Ben went searching for him.
Okay,
and then,
all right.
Here's the thing. It is really stupid because the guy robs the convenience store. He tosses Peter his milk. The guy asks Peter to help. He says, "It's not my responsibility." The guy rushes across the street. He bumps into Uncle Ben, or he doesn't even bump into him. He trips and falls. And the gun falls out of his pocket, his waistband or whatever. Ben, for some reason, lunges for it and gets shot. He had no reason to lunge for it. You just move and walk away. That guy was not threatening Ben. He wasn't even looking directly at. He was just running away. Ben killed himself by trying to be the hero.
Okay, well, at least it's still stupid. I must have blinked and I missed the part where they had the fight, because to me it just seemed like Peter was out and about for no reason, and then Uncle Ben comes walking down the street for no reason. I'm like, this cannot be.
No, it was
okay.
the Peter left because Ben said something about I'm not trying to be your father, and he said, "Good." And it's it's that moment.
Okay. Hey, I also like Dennis Leary.
Yeah, he was fine.
Okay. I also like the web shooters, actually.
Love the web shooters.
The whole the little poof they give when he shoots them, and the mechanical
I like
stuff
that they
too.
light up. I like that they actually, that was a cool little effect that when he in the dark you can see him going. There's a couple of scenes where he's in a shadow, but you see the little flash of red from his shooter. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I know it seems like a small thing, but I'm actually there's a lot of stuff on that online because people were whatever about it.
It's a huge thing, man. The web how the webbing is done is that's, for Spider-Man nerds, it's a big deal.
But I'm into it. Like you said, actually, I kind of buy the whole. I didn't mind Raimi's take on it either,
No,
and I think they were smart, especially for that Peter to be like it didn't really jive with the only spot it gets messy. Even though I do like the web shooters, I think they gave them to Peter appropriately. Like I buy his creation of them, especially since he's using some Oz tech with it. So it's not complete. Doesn't he get the little canisters? In fact, yeah, the webbing is already created over there.
Yeah, it's not webbing though. It's
Whatever.
used
Yeah.
as, it's used as like high tensile cord. And he buys a case of it, and then he takes it apart and then turns it into.
So I thought that was cool. Yeah, no, that was a good way to do it.
Yeah.
The only part where some of that falters, and maybe this is part because you're right. Like he's supposed to be a genius and stuff like that. Peter is infallible. Like maybe this is part of the reason the nerd stuff didn't work as much either, is because for all of those 2 minutes at the beginning where they tried to convince us that he's a nerd because he skateboards or whatever, he is infallible for the rest of the movie. He's an infallible genius for the rest of the movie. Like they try at some point for him to be down because it was all his fault because he showed Lizard I solved this equation that scientists couldn't do, and that was my one big mistake. It's kind of like even in his failure he's just
he's too
unstoppable.
good.
Yeah, like he really is. He's too good. And they try even to turn this into the city doesn't like him anymore, but I don't think they really succeed.
They don't ever lean into that nearly enough. Like
it's certainly not enough for the ending of the film where there's supposed to be this kind of catharsis in they turn all the cranes inward so he can swing faster through the city or whatever.
Which was a cool moment though. That was
I mean,
I like the crane moment from a visual standpoint. I thought that was real cool.
Visually, and also from it's like they try to. It's one of those small moments, I guess, technically that could have worked had it been earned or properly set up for the rest of the film. Because this is kind of the least friendly neighborhood Spider-Man of any of the Spider-Mans. Like I feel like all of it takes place in the city to some extent, which that's a part of it, sure. But it just felt less small than any of the other ones.
He doesn't feel street level hero here at all.
Not at all. But I'm glad that you mentioned and made a differentiation between his Peter and his Spider-Man, because I do agree I like his Spider-Man better than his Peter. And we actually had an interesting discussion about this because another friend of the show, Jonathan Blade, brought up that he had always seen Topher Grace as a possibility for a good Peter. And that conversation went on for a bit. So join the Discord. I won't get into it so much. You were less on board than I was. I feel like I definitely could have seen Topher doing that, but it sent us down the road of you thinking he was maybe a little bit too sarcastic. And that got me thinking, well, traditionally Spider-Man is pretty sarcastic, but it's also the one thing that when you do it wrong, it comes off really wrong. And thinking that Topher might overdo that, I was like, okay, I could see. But while Garfield, I think in this, we're probably talking mostly about writing here, but there's always acting and character and direction and everything. But there are some moments, in fact, at the very beginning of The Amazing Spider-Man, where he does start to get into some of that sarcastic stuff. And he's like, call me Spider-Man, call me amazing, just don't call me late for dinner. Like he literally drops that one. And I'm just like, that's not like, that's a bad example. That's when it goes wrong. I'm like, you couldn't come up with anything else. There was nothing else except for late for dinner. Like I would have been happier with, and boy, are my arms tired or something, after he swings in.
That's because you're not a comedic genius.
Like Andrew Garfield. So, did I have anything else? No. Wait. You mentioned... I agree. I wasn't stoked about Jamie Foxx or his performance, even though I like him just fine and stuff. What was happening when he started to fight him in the power plant and Jamie Foxx as Phantom Electro, like without a body, goes into the Transformers or whatever it is and plays the song Itsy Bitsy Spider by way of the Transformer vibrations?
That's your question. I've got a question. Here's my number one question.
Okay, all right.
My number one question regarding the character of Electro, who we have now, at this point in the film, seen not only do that, but completely dissipate himself and just become electricity.
Right.
Why is, when Spider-Man webs him, is he held in place?
Because Gwen Stacy magnetized his web shooters.
That's
I mean, that is the reason the movie gives.
no.
Straight up.
That's the reason him electrifying the web won't destroy them. That's not why his web is holding Electro there.
Okay.
Electro should just be going, oh man, I'm gone, now I'm back. It doesn't make
Oh yes.
any sense.
In fact, I'm surprised we haven't spoken much about Electro for that reason, because everything about him is horrible. His turn is also really bad, because at the beginning he's this nerd that understands electricity. You know, like the lights go out and he's like, that's circuit, whatever. He knows right away. So he's already got that, which is eye-rolly at best. But he's also totally nice. Like there's no... what they were obviously going for was the disillusioned loner or whatever it was. You know, they wanted to Jokerify Electro, absolutely. But he's just so nice up until the very moment he meets Spider-Man. And yes, some of it's accidental or whatever, but the turn is so bad overall in that moment because he has been so nice up until then.
The turn, I admittedly, I didn't like the look. But again, who the hell is going to blue for electricity? Zack Snyder, Flash, yellow, not blue, idiot. Electro, yellow, not blue.
Also, he becomes Electro by falling into a vat of electric
eels.
Again, they couldn't come up with anything else.
Here, okay, let me ask you, which is the better evolution of the character? He goes up and has to fix a thing. He falls into a vat of electric eels, or he was a guy that was down on his luck working for the power company who got electrocuted by some freak lightning while he was working on power lines. Guess what? Bada boom, I'm Electro.
I do like that better.
That's the actual comic intro. That's
I was literally just going to say.
In the comics.
In fact, my note is, judging just by his costume that I've seen over the years, I bet his actual origin story is ridiculous and still somehow less ridiculous than this movie one. And you just proved it to me. So
that's it. It's great, right? Like,
I really do have.
No, are you kidding me? I've got so many notes left here.
Dude, that is the weird thing. I have more notes on this than any of the Raimi movies.
Oh, can I tell you? I liked.
This is all bonus content. Go for it.
Yeah, when Gwen is falling, actually really like that sequence. I thought that was a really well shot.
Actually, yeah, edited also, because it puts like Spider-Man's in like 30 rocks in a hard places, you know, like with his foot in that and the gears in that and Goblin. Yeah,
I think it's super good. I thought that was actually very exciting, very well done. And then admittedly, I thought it was very kind of sweet in a weird way how when he slings the final web, it's a hand reaching out for her before it expands and then catches her. Really loved that. I thought it's cheesy, but it's so comic book on the nose. I loved it.
Sure. I would have liked if it was maybe a little less, and this is actually what I did for the whole movie, is oftentimes I would just see what they did and be like, Raimi wouldn't have done that. You know, like there's a moment where Harry and Peter are just together in a room, just basically just talking the movie out. And I'm like, Raimi never would have done this. You know, like anyway, the web reaching out with the fingers, like if Raimi had done it, I just feel like it would have been a little more understated. It would have been more of because the way it opens up and is 5 fingers in the film, it's like there's no question. It's like they're like, this is like a hand reaching out. And
I like how you said that, like King Shark, hand.
That is about the level of filmmaking that I believe was happening. You know,
yeah, it's fine. I like it because it does scream comic book to me. It's one of those things.
But that's why it could work. I'm saying there is a version of it that works
better. Anyway, yeah, for sure. I have to note that. So there's the kid, and I really love that scene where the kid gets his thing broken. Spider-Man shows up. I actually really love that we get a little circle back at the end with the kid. And admittedly, I went, that kid, I looked at him, and for a second, I was like, Nikolaj?
No, Nikolaj.
Nikolaj.
I'm still not hearing it.
Still not here. I was like, but it's not him. It's like that fake cheddar.
Oh, you looked it up. Dang it. Okay.
It's like the fake
cheddar. This kid's probably, it's the ages are all wrong for Nikolaj at this point.
I also, so Okay. Can we just also briefly talk about the ending of Spider-Man 2? And I don't mean the first or the second one,
Yeah,
not
the Sinister Six one, or
and not the third one where
Okay.
where Gwen is doing her last little bit. No, the fourth one with Rhino. I love that this was one of those confidence moments where they're like, of course we're going to make another one. but in reality, I like to think Mark Webb just went, wrap. I'm just done.
Well, this is the thing, right? Both of these movies made hundreds of millions of dollars.
No, I know that could have gotten a sequel.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, had it not been for Feige, it probably would have. But I'm guessing at this point, when this came out, Feige had come to them and they started talking about, what are we going to do with Spider-Man? How many,
Sure.
when this came out,
because they had already been killing it. I mean, certainly not to the extent.
This was 2012, right? When
Right.
Spider-Man 2 came out. When does Civil War hit?
I don't know, but again, I would put the watermark at. I go, okay, Civil War, because that's when Spider-Man shows up. But still, I would put the negotiation watermark at Avengers the month before this film comes out.
Well, sure, but that's what I'm saying is that by the time this movie came out, yeah, they could have made a sequel, but the MCU was in full swing, so they were never going to continue with this route. Like, it just doesn't
You're
seem
right.
like
Yes.
they were going to.
Absolutely, that's going to enter into it. I like to see, because I feel like this has happened before, where even a very commercially successful film comes out, but the general consensus, maybe the hearts and minds or whatever about it, is that it is complete garbage, and so a third is not made. I can't think of another example at this point, but again, this movie having made the hundreds of millions of dollars that it did, Amazing Spider-Man 2, I feel like I like the story where, by all accounts, a sequel should be made, but somewhere somebody was able to make, like the sane person prevailed at the end, not all of the people that will still give their millions of dollars to. I mean, whatever, I'm one of those people, but it's not like I wouldn't have seen The Amazing Spider-Man 3, right? We'd be talking about it right now.
Probably, yeah.
But, like I said, I like to think about the world wherein we were saved by a real hero that said, no way have you seen Amazing Spider-Man 2. That's all.
Again, I'm guessing Kevin Feige is the person.
You're right.
And he was like, so this is what we're doing, huh?
Even then, the whatever. We could, especially since we're getting into what if territory here, we could go on forever about what, in my opinion, Sony should have done was give Kevin Feige, in fact, what they probably did eventually, but certainly after too much talking, gave him carte blanche to do whatever, basically handed over the keys and made plenty of money for it. But then again, came back and is still making these Venom movies and etc.
It's a weird thing. Like, you gotta wonder, what is Sony doing, like, with their properties, where they're just like, we got to keep making these because we can't give them up. If we don't make the movie, we lose the license. But
how hard is it now? Like, it's with Marvel.
It's like, well, I have to assume that same thing with like the Morbius thing, because I think that's Sony too, right? That's not Marvel. So
I think
I've got to assume that it strictly comes down to, like, they don't want to co-produce and share money with Marvel any more than they have to.
I mean, certainly, yes. But why? I mean, one of them's got to take the role, because I know it's got to be a cooperation at some point, but it seems like at some point one of them is taking money for the license and the other is kind of sitting back while the other one does most of the heavy lifting. And why does that arrangement need to be Marvel taking most of the money while Sony does all the heavy lifting, and not the other way around, which obviously has worked out much better for everybody involved?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, Sony wants to be the masters of their domain.
Whatever. Have we reached the point where maybe this is another answer? Marvel is okay to have a B tier of superhero movies that their name isn't essentially attached to.
So,
right?
Okay, now this is such an interesting conversation, because I brought this up kind of in a side conversation with somebody on Twitter. What I think needs to happen, what I think would serve Marvel best, and from my weird brain that knows everything about this industry. It would make sense for Marvel Studios to create an offshoot called Marvel Max Studios. Marvel Max Studios, let them do The Punisher that's R-rated. Let them do Venom and all those things. Let Marvel Max Studios take all of those B-tier things, let them be played with in violent, horrible manners that doesn't get involved in the MCU. But you can still bring a ton of cool stuff to the screen. You can still placate and have fans love their characters. You can keep people that are fan favorites like John Bernthal. Bernthal has said he wants to keep playing the Punisher, but he's also said he's not interested in doing it in the MCU because they're going to water it down from even the Netflix
that would make
show.
zero sense. Yeah,
right.
Actually, you know what?
For them to do Marvel Max presents The Punisher, Marvel Max presents, whatever, you want to go down some of these darker roads, that would be amazing to have Kevin Feige have a equivalent. It's like in my dream world, Guillermo del Toro is given the reins to Justice League Dark, and he can run everything that involves Justice League Dark, and he can make all those choices, and that would be perfect. And I think that's what Marvel needs to do. They need to find somebody who understands the Garth Ennis and the Mark Millars and some of those more hardcore stories and can bring those to film and TV, unedited, uncut,
dude,
keeping it out of the MCU, but keeping all of that property behind it so that they can wear the actual outfits and they can have the real names and they can be the characters we've read.
I think you might have actually figured, because essentially this is what they have. Like those Venom movies never would have come out under any Disney title, even like Marvel's Disney now, right? Like the shows go to Disney Plus. Like the Venom films never ever would have come out in that shape or form under a Marvel strict Disney moniker.
Right.
So that's kind of functionally what they have. Obviously it's not put together in such a way, but that's arguably also what they had with the Marvel TV studios before they became the Marvel MCU proper is doing the TV shows that show up on Disney Plus now. And that's where that ultra-violent Punisher came from, which I never heard of, but have heard that it was more along the Max,
Yeah, Punisher Max and the Max brand from Marvel. For them to just do a Max Studios where you could even take the Marvel name off of it if you wanted to and still use the characters, whatever, man. Like,
that's true. You don't need. Who cares even about that?
It's more. Yes. And ostensibly they kind of have that with where properties are not owned by them. But my point is, like, it would be great to know if Sony wanted to do the super heavy R-rated Venom, that they could, and they can be allowed to do that. I don't know that they'd be allowed to. I don't know if there are.
That's the other thing I was always going to say. It's never going to happen.
Like,
never.
And it's a bummer because we got so close with the Punisher. Like, yeah, I want that hard R Punisher movie, man. That's what I want from that kind of thing. And I want to see, if you're going to give me Venom, give me Venom, man. Don't give me this nonsense. Like, the movies are silly, but it ain't Venom, dude. It's not. It's just, they're not Venom. They're not. It's not going to be Carnage. It's going to be this weird medium approximation of it that's meant for kids, And
so come back next week when we do Let There Be Carnage. Just kidding. I'm not even going to. I don't want to. That's a joke. We are not. I'm sure we're going to watch it and we'll talk about it at some point. But
we're definitely going to watch it.
Instead, come back next week when we do 2021's Silent Night. Matt, you brought this to my attention once again, another movie I had never heard of, but I believe you also have not seen.
I've not seen it, no. It's got Keira Knightley and Matthew Good, and then the kid who played Jojo Rabbit, Roman Griffin Davis is in it. And
excellent.
We're running into the Christmas holidays here, and I got to tell you, the newsletter for the month is shaping up to have some Christmassy films on there. I'm gonna give everybody a couple of my standards and break them down and tell you where to find them and all that. So look for that in a couple coming weeks.
Strange imports. What is it?
Rare exports.
Rare. So close.
You nailed it.
That's on there though, right?
It is. Rare exports. That is definitely on there.
All right.
It's also Strange
Okay.
Imports.
So come back next week for the strangest import of all. Maybe we've never seen it with Silent Night, the 2021, like you mentioned, Keira Knightley and Goody Good vehicle.
Matthew Goody Good.
And as always, you can find us at podcast@bookclubformovies.com or Facebook and Twitter, or of course, the most important and fantastic one, patreon.com/bookclubformovies. Matt, even though, oh boy, wow, that was a lot of bonus. That was more bonus content than I thought we were doing for that. So I think the show is ending right now. How about that? Or not.
Yep.
Hey, what the heck? Go for it.
All done.
Okay. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.